In this video tutorial, we're going to have a look at the difference between constructing a Python object and assigning a Python object. Let's consider the following computer program, and here you can see I've declared a class, and it's the class that you will have seen in the previous two videos in this particular playlist. When we come onto this line of the program, what we're going to be doing, we're going to be creating an instance of the demo class. And if we look to the execution space, what will happen here, we'll have the object, and this object you can see is labeled with my underscore instance underscore one, because this name is the name I used in the program here. I was responsible for typing this in. The thing I would like to emphasize here, you see I'm showing the model with the label, but another way in which you can do this is to say that this is bound to the object. Or, and this is my preference, this is pointing to where the object is in the execution space. Now, a lot of people put their hands up in horror if you start talking about pointers, and because it's got shades of older programming languages, and people say, oh, with objects you should hide pointers. But you can think of this actually pointing to where the object is in the execution space. So this line is often called a constructor line because it's constructed an instance of this class. In other words, it's constructed this object which is based on this class. Now, if we consider this line of code, we can see we're going to print the type of my instance underscore one. In other words, we're going to print the type of the object that we can see in the execution space, and the output we will get is shown here. And we can see clearly that it's telling us it's an instance of the demo class. If we now come onto this particular line, this is going to print the ID of my instance 1. In other words, it's going to be printing the ID of this object. And if we have a look at that, we can see that that prints 47123664, which is the unique identifier for the object that is currently in the execution space. Let's now consider this program statement, and you can see I've introduced this, my underscore instance underscore 2, and I'm assigning to that this here, my underscore instance underscore 1, and of course this was used on this line. Consequently, this is bound to the object we can currently see in the execution space. Or you can think of this as pointing to the object that's in the execution space. So when I assign this to this, what's happening? Well, this is bound to the object. It is not actually the object. You can think of this as the pointing mechanism to where the object is in the execution space. So if I copy the information that's inside this to here, and that's what I'm doing with this assignment statement, then this is going to be pointing to the same object in the execution space. And we can show that in our model by adding the following label, which is my underscore instance underscore 2. So after the execution of this program statement, we have the situation where we only have one object in the execution space, but bound to it are two labels. Now this line will print the type of my underscore instance underscore 2 to the output, and the output we will see is as shown here, and we can see that it is demo class. In other words, we locate this label, we can see it's attached to this object, and this object was based on this particular class. So we can expect to see the output showing demo class as we can see here. Now if we come onto this line, we're going to be printing the ID of my underscore instance underscore 2. So if we're going to print the ID of this, well, of course this is the name that is pointing in truth to this particular object, which we can see represented by this label. And the output we will expect will be the ID of this particular object. So let's see what the ID is. It's this here. And of course, if we look, we can see that this ID is the same as this one. And it should be, because we can see that this object has two labels attached to it. In other words, this and this both point to the same object. Now you may be thinking, so what? What's the point of all this? Well, if you look at this line, you may be tempted to think that when you say my instance 2 is assigned my instance 1 with the appropriate underscores, as you can see in front of you, you might somehow get another object. Well, you don't. You end up with these two names being bound to the same object, or if you prefer, pointing to the same object. When you wish to construct a new object, in other words, create an instance of a class, create an object based on a class, this is what you have to do here. You have to come up with a name that's appropriate, and to that name you assign, and you use the name of the class with these two brackets here. And this line gives you an instance of this particular class. So it's this line that gave you this object. What this line did, which is an assignment statement, you ended up with two names being bound to the same object. Check out the supporting website for these videos, and also consider subscribing to the YouTube channel and the Google Plus circle that relates to these videos. In addition, why not follow me on Twitter, as I issue a tweet every time I upload a new video.